Hello and welcome to the Eternal Extravaganza 6 Vintage Recap. This tournament took place on Sunday, March 19th in Baltimore, Maryland. It was sponsored by Decks Protection and brought to you by Tales of Adventure. The Vintage Top 8 also included the two highest EE point finishers. Joe Brennan and Nick DeJohn were both considerably ahead of the pack for the Eternal Extravaganza points, and both of them were rewarded and used their buys well with a top 8 finish in the vintage event. Moving down the top 8, we have the winner, Nick DeJohn, playing the Car Shops deck. His opponent in the finals, Hank Zong, was playing Sylvan Mentor. The top 4 included Jeremy Beaver with the Leovold Sulci strategy and Charley Welsh with the Stacks build of Workshops. And the rest of the top 8 was 4 Monastery Mentor decks piloted by Joe Brennan, Michael Herbig, Roland Chang of VSL fame playing the Sylvan Library build, and John Suarez of the Commander vs. Video fame. Also worth noting, Joe Brennan won the vintage event at Eternal Extravaganza 5, very powerful vintage player, not surprised to see him in the top 8. So breaking down the Mentor decks from the top 8, we have 3 standard stock lists. I believe they were all playing main deck Stony Silences, but otherwise were just the 3-color Monastery Mentor decks. Pyroblasts, Gushes, Swords to Plowshares, cards like that, very powerful. And the other 2 were both playing 2 Sylvan Libraries in their Mentor decks. It's just a very powerful card selection, card drawing engine when so much of the game is about board presence and the actual life totals don't matter too much. You can just draw a bunch of extra cards. Generally, cards that draw extra cards are restricted in Vintage, so this card is very powerful, clearly. There's no Abrupt Decays or easy removal spells to punish it. Speaking of Abrupt Decay, the other fair blue deck in the top 8 was the Sulci strategy, piloted by Jeremy Beaver. This deck structurally is very similar to the Mentor decks, except it doesn't actually play the card Monastery Mentor or any white cards. And the payoff is that you get to play with Deathrite Shaman and Leovold, and his real like big spell turn payoff card is 3 copies of Managorger Hydra, which if the card doesn't get Swords to Plowshares still ends the game just about as quickly as Monastery Mentor, tramples through monk tokens, and just pays you for casting your spells, like most of the win conditions that you want in Vintage. Nick DeJohn was also playing 4 copies of Archon Ravager, and more interestingly, 4 copies of Walking Ballista. This is a card that you can run out early and interact with your opponent's creatures, whether it's their Revokers or Jace Vryn's Prodigies or quick Monastery Mentors, but it also pays you off for having access to 12 artifact mana in the mid to late game, where you just make a giant threat. It lets you do the same Triskelion combo kills with Archon Ravager that you could do before, but this is a card you can play off 2 mana, unlike Triskelion. So in a slightly different flavor of Mishra's Workshop, Charley Welsh played the Stacks build, where he wasn't playing Fleetwheel Cruisers and instead had Smokestacks and Crucible of the World's main deck, basically trying to blow up all the opponent's permanents as much as possible and get value off Crucible and Wasteland Strip Mine, cards like that, and play a slightly different, slightly longer game strategy, a little more of a prison approach than just a deck that kills you really quickly. Thank you everyone for watching. If you want to see these deck lists and more, feel free to check out TOAMagic.com. We'll have satellite events for EE7 starting very soon. If your store does not have any events lined up, you can tell your store owner to contact us and we'll be happy to set up a EE satellite event. Further, you can find us on Facebook at TOAMagic.com or on Twitter at TOAMagic. Thanks for watching.